I did want to say that appreciate you holding this, and thank you, Mr. Alborough, for coming with us. I was, thanks to well, because of the pandemic isolation, I was able to look at your books and start reading. Haven't read them all, but I was curious. I think you just answered it, but this inquiry,
Yes.
As you call it in the glossary and in the book, it's not but you also say there's no process, and I agree with that. But this inquiry, is it just becoming aware of the effects of personality?
Yes, because I think that the normal state of man out there is there is no awareness of it. And because there's no awareness of it, there is only the living of it. So in as much as it's seen through, it starts to lose its kind of grip, and the identification with it starts to be seen through. There's a deconstruction of that identification with it. And that can happen through talking with someone who is there. So I actually feel there is a role for a teacher in this. Now, I feel that the role of teacher has been so solid that it's almost like spiritual teacher, bad, bullshit, it's ego trip, it's somebody taking advantage, it's abuse, it's totally linked with that now. But I've found in the few people that I connect with that it is helpful to have a guide in, well, what is personality and what isn't? And gradually that choiceless awareness that I'm talking about, which does see through it, it's like a flame that gets lit up, and then it's lit up in the person. And it's like the flame is passed on, and they start experiencing choiceless awareness in their own life, and they start saying, God, I really reacted to that guy when he said that to me. What was that about? And this is what I did all through the years. I wrote a journal, and I examined my reactions constantly, and I examined my past, and I realized, oh, I've got reactions that other people don't have. And I have body illnesses that other people don't have that seem to be related to things that happen to me. I have things that are similar to my brother and sister in terms of belief, because I imbibed them from the beliefs in my family that are different to another family. So there are very practical things involved here that can be seen. And when they're seen, it's almost like if there's readiness, it just kind of happens. But I think the role of the teacher is to just say, yeah, what you saw there is absolutely, that's your choices awareness. That's it. It's working, you know. And the personality will try and come back in and gain control because it doesn't want to lose control. Yeah, that's the real, for me, that's what inquiry is. Inquiry is the choiceless awareness falling on the life and what is lived, and seeing through the activities of personality. So inquiry, I think, has become linked with the big boss, the one that everyone defers to, Ramana Maharshi. And I think he's very famous for talking about the question of inquiry and who am I, which of course is all great and all true. But I feel what's happened with that and that use of inquiry is there's an answer that's implicit, because where we are, everybody knows, oh, the answer is there is no you. But you don't know that. It's like that's not real inquiry. Inquiry finds out. And that's the sort of inquiry I'm talking about. What is real? Is the personality real? Is that who I am? Is what I am beyond that? What is left? This is for me what real inquiry is.
That's excellent, sir. I appreciate that answer. I've had experiences where, well, I started with Robert because like you, I said, this guy's coming from the other side. You know, it it wasn't a spiritual personality,
Yes.
you know, and I had been living a spiritual personality for many years. I was doing that kind of escape seeking.
Yes.
And but after I started reading Robert and met him personally, I started seeing beyond that. But even before that, the reason I went looking for Robert was because in a 12-step program, we started, they started saying things like suffering is optional. You know, pain is real, but the suffering is optional. And we had 12 steps to alleviate that. And, you know, we began to find out that the suffering came from the big baby or personality being a king baby, they call it, being in charge, the personality,
Yeah.
and associating with that. So I found this interesting. I appreciate it. I'm going to finish up the books. They are good. And I wanted to, just for fun, I did see one that Robert and I debate about sometimes, the big C and the little c. You know, the hard question is it from the brain or is it from somewhere else consciousness, the big C? And you make that distinction, and a neurologist might say, "How do you know?" That's just for fun because I don't know.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see your comment on that.
Okay, so I had those watching here has had those experiences. So in order to discuss this, we have to have words that we can attach to that experience. And, you know, being is one. You know, I don't particularly go for the Indian ones because I'm not Indian. Nirvana, all of that has connotations for me I don't get. So being is quite uncluttered a word, I think. And consciousness seems, I mean, it's overused now, but it does seem to be a way of saying there is something. I mean, I don't see how anyone could disagree that something is living this. There is a life force. I could call it life force. It's more neutral, maybe. And then there is a personal consciousness, which is the one that thinks I am talking to you and I am lifting this up. And the consciousness that there seems to be my choice to do that. So those to me are the two kinds. It's quite simple, really. And as for the other big consciousness question, we don't know, and we will never know. And that's fine.
That's why I asked. You know, I agree. I don't think we have the ability to know. I don't think we have the. So I agree with you. I sure appreciate those answers, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And who wants to know? That's the other thing. Which is the part that needs to know that? What will it make your life better in some way? We don't know anything anyway. I mean, I know this. I do know this because I wouldn't be talking about it otherwise. But this is about relative level things. This is about the way a life is lived and what can be observed in a life. So I always say that you need to know what you need to know to find this. And then there's a dropping off point where you realize, well, outside of that, we don't know those big answers, but you don't need to. Knowing those answers, there's nothing in me that says when I get those answers, I will be happier or more fulfilled, or I've got the answers I need. I don't really need any other answers because the answers I've got lead me to living this life in a state of, well, not a state, but in a way of openness and heartfulness. And this is where we get to, this is it.
That's very well said. I wanted to agree with you, Jez. I think that's really well said. And I think a lot of people get into this, I really want to know the answers to ultimate questions, not because they want to be able to live better, but because they're terrified of not being at all, what we call dying. And they want some reassurance that they are connected to something greater than oneself that will continue. And hopefully, superstitiously, they will be conscious of all that once the body stops existing.
What you said earlier, sorry to butt in, but what you said earlier about the compassion,
Yes.
you proved that we are connected to something bigger than ourselves. And that's a very real thing now. That's happening now in what you've stated and our feeling of connection in this talk. It's here now.
Yeah, I get that. But the problem is, if you feel this compassionate connection, then you don't really have any more questions. But if you don't feel it, then you are still completely centered on I must survive by all means. And that's the most important thing going on. And right
Yes.
now that's being tested because this plague is loose on the world and people are scrambling to find ways to avoid dying. And when we accept that everything will be lost, if we can understand that, as the Buddha taught, old age, illness, and death, and that this life that we cling to is like a light bulb. It flashes for a brief instant and it passes. If we can come to terms with that, then we don't need to worry about compassion or what happens after death. It's all just very natural. And this is it.
As we keep saying, this is about seeing life as it is, and there are things you can know and the things you can't know, and seeing life as it is means that I'm not dead yet, so I don't know what happens. All I know is this is happening now. The compassion that you spoke about is the most wonderful thing, and that connection, and I would call it love, you know, and the ability for you to have shared what you shared with these people, for them to be touched, is a wonderful thing. And I'm doing my little bit of that. And I find that incredibly touching, because to share about these things with people who are ready to hear it, the connection you have goes way beyond most social interactions the one have. So for me, they're very sacred, because you're dealing with things that are close to the heart, literally.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't kind of personally fixate on death. My focus is more on, you know, Castaneda talks about it as keep death on your shoulder. Well, I'm sure, like you, I don't have a problem doing that. That's kind of inbuilt, because you can't not see it and know it. But that casts the living of this life and the joy and the fact that it's even here in a light that is so wonderful and joyful and painful sometimes, but the painful bits is part of the deal, you know.
Well, that's very inspiring. It really is. I love hearing it.